It is 9 a.m. and welcome to the second meeting of the year of the California Commission on the State of Hate. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of this meeting in that other language. Alec, if you could run the slide. To display closed captions on your screen, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. Select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. When you see You've enabled translation at the top, select English as the speaking click and save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And we will send instructions in Spanish in the chat. Now, if we may, Dr. Watts, if you could do our roll call and the establishment of a quorum.
Let's see, Chair Levin.
Present.
Vice Chair Adamski.
Good morning, I'm here.
Commissioner Che.
Present.
Commissioner Cuellar.
Present.
Commissioner Filer. Let's see, Commissioner Roybal.
Present.
Commissioner Salcedo.
Present.
Commissioner Suthers.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. We have a quorum. I will now go to item C, which is review of the agenda. We've already had the call to order and establishment of a quorum. And now this is the review of the agenda. We'll approve the minutes, but we're going to switch agenda items, which we are allowed to do, switching number 4, which is the discussion of this marvelous report that was put together. Thank you all who've participated. We're going to move that to number 4 and move the presentation by Dr. Bell to number 3. Subsequent to that, we will have chair and subcommittees updates and discussion. I'll be making a statement, as well as our vice chair. Then we'll have our subcommittee on patterns, trends, and prevention, our subcommittee on resources, support, and response. And lastly, on that area, we'll have subcommittee on community forums. Next, under item 6, commission member announcements. Number 7, future agenda items. And number 8, public comment on items not on the agenda. And Alec, if you could put up the public comment slide, I'd like to move on to reviewing the process for public comment. This is really important. Your participation is not only something that is allowed, it is something that we would like to hear. So if you are joining us on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature to join the public queue. If you're joining us by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute. You may also submit a written public comment by email at all caps csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. Let me just repeat that. All caps csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. If you submit a written comment that pertains to an agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is opened and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it during the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. For anyone joining us in the room in Los Angeles, please raise your hand for a verbal comment and we will unmute the room. You may also submit a written comment by writing your comment on a piece of paper and handing it to Shanna Hart, who I thank very much for your service all the time, our staff member in the room today. In the interest of time, we will limit, let's try that again. In the interest of time, we will limit verbal public comments to 2 minutes per person. Next, we'll have a commission discussion on this. Is there any commission discussion? Okay, we'll move on then to public comment. Monica, do we have public comments on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Rebecca, do we have any email public comment?
No email public comment.
And Shannon, lastly, do we have any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
No public comments.
Okay. Next, if we could go on to item 2, approval of the minutes from February 26, 2025. We will now have that in section A, and if you look, you can also, for some of you, see it in the chat.
I move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a
Can I-
second?
I'll second it.
Thank you both. Is there any commission discussion? I think we've already done that. So we're, so now I just, now that we have the motions and a second, Alec, can we move to a vote?
Chair Levin, we should take public comment before a vote, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did. I apologize.
Right.
So, so we do not have any commission discussion, it doesn't look like. Public comment, Monica, do we have public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Rebecca, do we have any email public comment?
No email public comment.
Shannon, do we have any public comment in the room?
No public comment.
All right. Is there any additional commission discussion? Do we have a motion?
Chair Levin, I already made the motion.
And we had a second from Commissioner Salcedo, I believe, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so now we can just move to the vote. Okay, thank you. Alec, can we move to our vote?
Absolutely. Chair Levin,
Aye.
Vice Chair Dembski,
Aye.
Commissioner Shea,
Aye.
Commissioner Quayler,
Aye.
Commissioner Filer, Commissioner Roybal,
Aye.
Commissioner Salcedo,
Aye.
Commissioner Suthers,
Aye.
and the minutes are approved.
All right. If we could then move to the next agenda item, which is the new number 3, I believe, correct? Because we've just switched the discussion for the 2024-2025 annual report to number 4. So without further ado, I would like to introduce a fantastic scholar we have today who we are very fortunate to have. I do want to note, by the way, though, that the information presented today does not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission or the California Civil Rights Department. And that will also go, by the way, for my chair statement later. Let me give you, if one can, a brief description of our expert today. Dr. Janine Bell is a recognized scholar in the area of policing and hate crime and is a Kurt and Linda Rodin Professor of Law and Social Justice at Loyola University Chicago School of Law, not the LA one. She teaches in the area of criminal procedure, but is also taught on the First Amendment as well. Her research is broadly interdisciplinary, touching on both political science, law, and relying on her empirical expertise, something that we seek to do with our commission, particularly now, as we are not getting experts highlighted in fora that we used to, whether it would be in executive agencies at the federal level or before Congress. So this is a real treat. Her most recent book, Hate Thy Neighbor, Move-In Violence and the Persistence of Racial Segregation in American Housing, uses heartbreaking stories to show how intolerance still affects us in that area. Her first book, Policing Hatred, which I highly recommend, Law Enforcement, Civil Rights, and Hate Crime, New York University Press, was an ethnography of a big city police hate crime unit. Her research has been featured at conferences and journals literally around the world. She's been in ProPublica, the New York Times, USA Today, and a variety of other places. She's an elected member of the American Law Institute. For those of you who aren't lawyers, those are the folks who, for instance, formulated the Model Penal Code, and she's a fellow of the American Bar Foundation. She earned her undergraduate degree from Harvard College and a master's from University of Michigan, her JD from University of Michigan, and her PhD from University of Michigan. So don't talk football to her. But in it, because they win a lot. So without further ado, I want to give our scholar for today a warm welcome, Dr. Janine Bell, who I most recently saw do a fantastic presentation at none other place than the White House last year. Dr. Bell, thank you so much.
Brian, thank you so much for that. All right, so I want to get right to it. I started studying hate crime in the early 1990s, in the time between when RAV versus St. Paul, the Supreme Court's case striking down St. Paul's hate crime statute on First Amendment grounds, and the next case, the Supreme Court's decision the very next year upholding hate crime in Wisconsin versus Mitchell. I was a student and I was new to the scholarship on hate crime, and I was very confused by many scholars' argument that no one knows what a hate crime is because hate crimes are too vague and too hard to identify. Could I have the slides, please? All right, the next slide. So there were worries that hate crimes would be confused with similar ideas, several of which had hate in the title. Is it a hate crime? Is it a hate incident? Is it hate speech? And there were clear worries that hate crimes would be confused with other ideas like discrimination, ideas like hate speech, ideas like hate harassment. And it was confusing to me because all of these ideas had clear definitions, and I knew what the definitions were. So I decided to investigate the institution, the one institution that was required to definitively identify hate crime, and that's the police. So I ended up spending 5.5 months in a specialized police unit only focused on hate crime. This unit was responsible for investigating all of the city's hate crime. I looked very closely at what this police unit did. I did this by interviewing current and former members of the unit. I read 700 of the unit's current case files. And this was easy because I had open access to the unit. I had a special badge that let me into the unit whenever I wanted. And I went everywhere with the detectives during the time that I was there studying the unit. I also did some checks on what the cops were telling me. I talked to prosecutors, interviewing them about hate crime cases, and I also interviewed victims advocates about the way that hate crime was enforced in Center City. The next slide, please. At the time, the Center City Hate Crime Unit was probably one of the best units in the country. It was really large. It had 19 officers and was quite racially diverse. There were white officers, there were Black officers, there were Asian American officers, there were Asian language interpreters, there were Latinx officers. At the time, the unit was probably the gold standard for hate crime investigation. And the unit itself became the very best, and it was 20 years old at the time that I studied it. It was not the first unit, but it was 20 years old at the time I was there. And it was the best for enforcing the law. And it was the best for identifying hate crime. There's a real problem, and this has been established in other units, in separating hate crime from hate speech. You can do this, and I write about this in my book, Policing Hatred, which you see the cover of in front of you. If you look at bias crime indicators, the detectives in the unit had developed a series of bias crime indicators. For instance, racial, ethnic, and gender differences between the perpetrator and the victim, with respect to vandalism, which is a crime, drawings, markings, or other graffiti. You interview the victims and you look to the victims or any witnesses' perceptions. And finally, you look to see whether there's representation of organized hate groups. This is what the best specialized units do, and they are able to separate hate crime from hate speech. Now, these types of units are incredibly rare, and they are the best for victims, they're the best for the law. There are very few cities that have these units. At the time, meaning in the late 1990s, there was law enforcement data that suggested that 6% of police departments had these sort of units. And I've not seen any recent data on this. LEMAS stopped collecting data on whether there's an actual bias crime unit, but we know that in excess of 80% of police departments do not even submit bias crime numbers to the FBI. So the likelihood that there are specialized units that are more prevalent than that 6% is exceedingly low. Cities that have specialized units have the best chance of having some sort of remedy for hate crime. So perpetrators caught and some sort of punishment. I'm happy to talk about other approaches. There's lots of scholarship on other approaches for investigating hate crime. And I hope that I'll get some questions about this because I can go on about this. And I'm going to stop right there to allow more times for questions about this really interesting area.
What a fantastic presentation, and I encourage fellow commissioners and members of the public, as well as other guests, to ask questions. I'm going to step back. I have some questions, but I'm going to step back so to facilitate discussion from our other stakeholders.
Chair Levin or Ms. Chavez, do you mind calling on people, please?
Commissioner Che.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think Commissioner Salcedo had their hand up first, but I'm happy to go.
Yeah, please go.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bell. This is an area of great interest to me personally because of the work that I do through Stop API Hate and our local coalition on safety in San Francisco. One of the things that we know is that there is a tremendous hesitancy of working with law enforcement for a variety of reasons that we don't need to go in here. I think that's been covered a lot on our commission. And at this time, we also have a situation where it's a very anti-immigrant climate. What were some of the things that you were able to observe and learn about with regard to the trust and any approaches, I think, to mitigate, I think, some of the concerns, including the fact that many of our community members feel like nothing can be done about whatever they experience. Thank you.
I want to speak specifically about the Asian American community and hate crime. I seem to get a sense that that was part of your question as well. One in the unit, right, that I studied in Center City, in addition to 3 Asian language interpreters and there was a close relationship between the victims advocate in the community and the unit. So the unit had to get the cooperation of these victims advocacy organizations and had a very close relationship. So when they found out about hate crimes that had been committed, they would sometimes, and they were referred these hate crimes by the victims advocacy organizations in the community. They would reach out to the victim. They would interview the victim with, if need be, one of the Asian language interpreters. And they would reassure the victim that the police department was taking care of it quite seriously. And this was part of the approach the unit used because they had many touches. And I've seen that in New York City, for instance, victims advocacy organizations work with both the prosecutor's office and the police department, the police hate crime unit. The New York City police department has quite a large bias crime unit. And with repeated contacts, the community has come to know that the police department takes these incidents seriously. So I hope that can provide some sort of way forward for dealing with these really difficult problems. And I have seen approaches in other cities that have been lacking with police. For instance, the investigation of the spa murders. I did a lot of media, deliberately, a lot of media after the spa murders in Atlanta. And the police investigation of that hate crime was horrible. They did not bring native speakers to the spa to gather information about the crime. And that's Hate Crime Investigation 101. Of course, this happened in Georgia, which is not known for either its hate crime law or its ability to investigate hate crime. I hope I've answered your question sufficiently.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Che, did she address your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
And thank you. I'm going to move on then to Commissioner Salceda, who I believe had her hand up before. And I can't see any other hands up from the commission. If someone sees someone with a hand up, please let me know. But we'll go to Commissioner Salceda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Levine. First, I want to uplift the life of Linda Becerra Moran, who was brutally murdered by the Los Angeles Police Department. And I guess my question, and thank you so much, Dr. Bell, for this presentation. You know, some of the things that you uplifted, right, is how a lot of times, if not oftentimes, you know, policing is driven by hatred, right? And I believe that the killing of Linda Becerra Moran was motivated by hate. I believe that the officer who just bluntly shot her one time in the chest for, you know, for an alleged reason that it doesn't seem like it's accurate. Obviously, that act ended up the life of Linda. So I want to ask you what are some of the perhaps ways of tracking the way police does things that are, I guess, hate motivated, and it's really hard to like quantify it in that way, right? Because how do you measure hate? But are there any type of mechanisms that you think we could perhaps utilize to say this was hate motivated, right? Again, in the case of Linda Becerra Moran, I believe that, you know, the shooting of Linda was motivated by hate because she was trans. perhaps because she was monolingual speaking person. And yeah, I just wanted to ask if you have any insight of how do we figure out the way law enforcement's actions towards people.
We have an enormous problem with law enforcement in this country. I am a resident of the city of Chicago, and I've been writing about violence committed by law enforcement officers and done a study. I have a whole separate area of scholarship that looks into violence from murders to everyday acts of violence committed by law enforcement officers. These are absolutely violations of individual civil rights. And I think the civil rights frame is better suited to government officials, because police officers are government officials, than the hate crime frame. As a hate crime scholar and also a police scholar, I use the civil rights framework for talking about government officials that violate their oaths of duty to civilians. And I use the hate crime frame for talking about civilians who commit these human rights violations. I hope that answers some, at least in part. I haven't solved the problem of police violence. You know, I'm working on it, but I'm not there yet.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other hands up? I do not see any. If someone can just alert me if we have any other hands up, because I want to save my question for last.
Commissioner Suthers, you had your hand up. I saw that.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you for recognizing me. First, I want to echo the condolences and sympathies shared by Commissioner Salcedo. Dr. Bell, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm the president of the Los Angeles Police Commission. And that tragic shooting is going to come before myself and our other commissioners for adjudication shortly. So that's unfortunately all I can say, other than to offer my condolences and deep sympathy for what happened. At LAPD, we do have a unit very similar to NYPD. They've actually, in the past year, started tracking hate incidents as well as hate crime. And the challenge that we face is one of officers asking the right questions. I look forward to reading your book, asking the right questions when they talk to victims of crimes, to ask them the totality of the crime that actually happened. And so, for example, we've had a couple of robberies in LA that, in further discussion with the victims, utterances made by the suspect then made it a hate crime and not just a robbery. So I'm just looking forward to reading your book and also understanding any training methodologies or curriculum that you have so that these officers better understand when they have a hate crime. And then second, I also look forward to reading your research on violence committed by law enforcement. And believe me, as a veteran of 3 law enforcement agencies who became a police officer because of being a victim of police misconduct, I'm hoping that I'm inside of these organizations in a position where I can help change that culture and help address some of these things that do happen that are not to be, if you will, tolerated.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner Suthers. Are there any other hands up? I do not see any, but I want to make sure that if any of the commissioners wants to ask a question, Because I am now a facilitator, I want to make sure that they get to go first. So do we have any commissioners that have any questions or hands up?
Chair Levin, I do have my hand raised, and I wasn't necessarily finished.
Oh, please, by all means.
Okay, thank you. I also don't see other hands, so I don't want to step in if there's any other hands. Happy to wait. But if there are no other hands, I like to proceed.
No, by all means, please.
Thank you. Dr. Bell, the question that I have is also, and I understand that we may not have the answers, but since you are, you know, the person who has been doing this work and this is your specialty, I would really appreciate any insight that you may be able to provide. You know, when we're talking about like enforcing the law, right? And you know, how do we? And I can tell you, we as an organization believe in healing justice, right, and transformative justice. But when there are acts of hate, specifically towards the most vulnerable, and when you cannot necessarily prove that the action was motivated by hate, even though there could be a belief and there could be perhaps evidence simply because of the action, right? How do we then ensure that those perpetrators are held accountable according to the law? And how do we hold those individuals accountable and really make sure that we work together with the district attorney's office, for instance, to make sure that what the community asks or what the community is demanding as part of the justice and healing process, how do we go about those processes? Because, you know, oftentimes it seems like, you know, the district attorney is working more favorably with law enforcement or the police. I'm going to say law enforcement may not be the appropriate term. And, you know, not necessarily bringing justice or implementing the law as supposed law enforcers. So any insight that you can provide would be super helpful.
All right. Are you talking about police violence? Or are
Yes.
you talking about, okay, if you're talking about police violence, there is a way to prosecute civil rights violations. It's very hard. There's a formula for it, and the best thing to have in those cases, because the issues of hate are not relevant to, they're not important in civil rights violations. You need violations of individual civil rights. So the most important thing to have is a district attorney, a prosecutor's office who is expert in prosecuting cases of police misconduct, right? And really wants to do this. If you have that, then it can be done. And there are jurisdictions around the country that have been able to do that. If you don't have that, then it's going to be hard. That's all I can say in that context.
Yeah, but there's civil rights and there's also the criminal law, right? So like there's two different sets of laws, I guess. And I'm talking about criminally, right? Like how do we ensure that the things that we have in place, right? And in this case, right, like the definition of a hate crime, the definition of a hate incident, right? Like here in Los Angeles specifically, right? And when actions are taken place that, you know, for instance, in the case of Linda Becerra Moran, right? She was just brutally shot, one shot right through the heart. And again, the community feels that was hate motivated, right? And criminally, there's a way to prosecute that, but and obviously civil rights is like a different thing, but criminally, right, like the person still out there, right? It's has been left on administrative leave. And so anyways, I'm just trying to, just get your insight on whatever you can provide.
All right. It sounds like, I don't know the case specifically, that's a problem of political will, not a problem with the law, not a problem with the facts of the case, but a problem of political will, the willingness to go forward in that particular case. And we see that around the country with the murder charge, right? So.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? By the way, let me just hold on a second. Commissioner Salcedo, thank you so much for bringing this up. We are nowhere if we don't have that interplay of community voices, earnest and honest community voices commingling with the experts we bring in. So thank you for not only bringing this terrible case up, but also for doing the exact kind of thing that this commission should be doing. So I just wanted, before I went on to other questions, I just wanted to say that, particularly in this time, when so many transgender people understandably feel under attack, not only by criminals, but institutions as well. Do we have any other questions, or did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Salcedo? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, thank you.
But no, thank you. Do we have any other commissioner hands up at this point?
Chair, I have my hand up.
Oh, okay. I am. Why don't I get to see this on my screen? Vice Chair Adamski, thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And thank you so much, Dr. Bell. I really appreciate the clarity with which you differentiated between, sorry, I've totally lost the words I was going to say, civil rights law and hate crimes law when we're talking about law enforcement as being public officials. And that's really, it's very formative framing for me. For the last 2 years, I have served on the subcommittee for making recommendations to law enforcement. And now I'm thinking we need to make recommendations about law enforcement. And I want to thank you for your clarity and forthrightness in talking about political will. That's a shining star of a statement for me today. I just want to express my appreciation. If you have any further comments, I'd love to hear them.
I will say in response, it's very important that we tell the truth about what's happening in these cases. And I've written many articles about the failure of public officials to enforce hate crime law, right? Devote the money to specialized units, sort of hold the hold police officials' feet to the fire about this. One sort of very wise, very senior hate crime official said that the FBI's hate crime report is 100 pages of zeros. And we know that hate crimes are occurring in this particular in these jurisdictions where all the officials, and there are people who are in charge. There are police departments, police officers, police chiefs in charge, and they're not doing anything. And there needs to be some sort of, we need to stop being silent about this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Damsky and Dr. Bell. Are there any other hands up? And if anyone has access to looking where the hands are up, let me know, because I do not see any. So do we
Chair
have
Levin, I have a question, actually.
Oh, but
That's all right.
excuse me. Let me introduce for those home gamers who don't know, Dr. Alec Watts has been an indefatigable researcher and beyond ally for this commission. So let me just say, the floor is always open to you because you're the one that helped make it. So please, floor is yours, my dear sir.
Thank you, Chair Levin. Dr. Bell, thank you for your presentation. I did want to ask if maybe you could go just one level deeper in terms of the specific things that hate crime units do that you think would sort of improve law enforcement responses to hate crimes, either investigating them more or doing what they should be doing. You mentioned sort of language services. I'm just wondering if there's anything else super specific that we could, some sort of structure that you'd recommend agencies implement within the framework of a hate crimes unit.
All right. This is the way that specialized units, certainly the one in Center City. Center City is a big city. You've definitely heard of it. You've probably been there. I don't name it to protect the law enforcement officers who spoke with me. It was a unit that investigated all the crimes for the entire city. Police departments are frequently divided into districts. There are detectives and other law enforcement officers in each of the geographic districts that investigate the crimes that happen in the particular geographic area. So this was a specialized hate crime unit. So they were located at police headquarters, and they had all the hate crimes for the entire city. This is very important. If you have all the hate crimes for the city, then you develop ideas about hate crime and procedures and routines that make it very easy to separate things that are not hate crimes. In my book, I call them the typical non-hate crime from actual hate crimes. So you get good at it. So this is a procedure that I absolutely recommend. A centralized unit that does all the incidents for the entire city.
Is there any follow-up, Dr. Watts?
No, that's extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other hands up? I cannot see whether hands are up or not. So if one of our assistants can let me know, and if not, I'll ask a question. But I want to make sure that all the folks present here get a chance first.
Chair, Rebecca Goodsell has her hand up.
Oh, by all means, Dr. Goodsell, thank you. And thank you for the wonderful work you do for our commission. That goes to all the wonderful staff who are doing just such incredible research. Please, the floor is yours, Dr. Goodsell.
Thank you, Chair Levin. Dr. Bell, this has been really insightful and especially interesting as we're thinking of working with law enforcement for updating their hate crimes training. And we've looked into kind of what makes an effective training in general. And obviously, with your background, I wanted to ask what you would recommend be included in a hate crimes training that's kind of a general training for all officers entering the agency. So what would you recommend are the most important pieces to be included? And is there anything that these hate crime units are doing that they would like general officers to know?
There's quite good training. The federal government has hate crime training for officers. And, you know, I've seen hate crime trainings. You know, I was there at the hate crime training, and even more than the hate crime training, you need buy-in from the officers about not sorting it out themselves. So detective reports to the scene of something. There are slurs there. Don't you sort out whether there are slurs there and whether it's actually a hate crime or not, right? Because your inclination based on a 2-hour training is probably not good. It just isn't, right? Because, you know, you may be a person who uses slurs in your ordinary life. You know, you're too conflicted. Send it to the hate crime unit. They're the experts, let them sort it out. So that is my piece of advice about, and the unit in Center City had a rule that anything with slurs got sent to them, and they sorted it out. And in my book, I talk about because slurs were sent to them, they had, you know, 4 types of typical non-hate crimes that they immediately ejected, right? Because they, you know, they were about something else.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other questions? As I try to navigate the raise hand symbol because it's not showing up on my screen. So if there's anyone else that has their hand up, if Alec or Monica could just let me know. All right.
I'm not seeing any other raised hands, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair Dansky. All right. I have a 2-part question, and again, thank you so much for this presentation, the wonderful one you did at the White House as well. It really engenders the kind of discussion, by the way, that is exactly what I hope to bring to subsequent meetings where we have experts, not only community fora, but regularly at meetings, particularly at this difficult time where we're not going to get opportunities to get experts into public policy discussions that are not being held at the federal level and elsewhere. Anyway, here's the question. In an article I wrote in Stanford Law and Policy Review, after looking at a big city hate crime unit, one of the things that the commander of that unit told me was something that he had put together similar to other policing type assistance units. And he called it DIRT, Direct Intervention Response Team, but it could have any acronym. And that is when there's not a big city. You know, California, people think the big cities are LA and San Diego and San Jose and San Francisco and Sacramento. But we are a very big and diverse state. And we have many rural areas and many sheriff's departments where it doesn't appear that we're getting generating the kind of reports. So my question is, what do you think of in circumstances where a department, most departments in the United States are 50 or under, where if it's not feasible by to have a hate crime unit, what about a bias crime liaison officer who has some gravitas that can be the person where these reports kind of roll up. In other words, if we have a condition in major cities or procedures in major cities where anytime there's a possible hate crime, it gets rolled up the chain. Can we do something similar with a bias liaison officer when there isn't an actual unit? And my second question is a complete non sequitur, as my fiance will tell you I am very good at doing. And that is, what are your concerns with regard to the lack of due process and some of the targeting that's being done with respect to deportations? Because we are a state of immigrants, and I wanted to get your opinion on that as a legal scholar as well. So that's a two-part. First part relating to bias liaison officers. Second part, your opinions with regard to deportations that don't appear to have due process. Anyway, awaiting your response.
All right, I'll take the easy question first. The immigration deportation, it's an abomination like many things that are happening now. All right. All right. The question about dirt. Dirt is something that will work with one caveat. The individuals that you refer that are leading dirt in any setting have to absolutely believe in hate crime. They have to believe that it happens. They have to be well trained in knowing the markers. And they have to be unafraid of the political consequences of identifying situations as hate crimes. There are huge, I learned in my study of the unit, there are huge political consequences in standing up for hate crime. And the officer that that is in charge of dirt-like situations has to be brave enough to deal with that.
Wow, thank you. If we don't have any other questions, and I'm going to delegate this to Monica, I'd like to go to public comment at this time. So first, if we could go to Monica, do we have public comment on Zoom?
Yes, we have a hand raised by Greg Vizier.
Please, Mr. Desir, go.
Thank you, Chair Levin, and thank you very much, Dr. Bell. I have three questions. One is, first of all, I should tell you, I work with the ARC of California, a developmental disability group, and I'm currently doing some work with the State Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training on developing the hate crime training video that all officers will be required to observe. And Rebecca Goodsell is involved in that too, and she asked one of the questions I was going to ask. One is, as far as anti-disability crimes go, they're known in California and nationally, and I think internationally, as the invisible hate crimes because there are so few that are ever reported to police or by police. And we've made some, in terms of hate crimes reporting in general, we've made some progress in California. I see almost none in the area of anti-disability hate crimes. So I wanted to ask you about what light you can shed on that. Secondly, and this follows up on Rebecca Goodsell's question, what is the best approach you've seen to drawing a distinction between the first responding officers, what he or she must do, and what the agency thereafter must do? And the third question is very specific, that may I call you to consult you as we're working on this training project with the commission?
All right, I'll take the easiest question first, which is your third question. Yes, you can reach out by email. And we can set up a time to talk. And I'm sure you can find me on email, right? Meaning you can find my contact information. Yes, you can reach out via email. Your first question, first of all, with respect to anti-disability crimes, first of all, I want to reiterate that law enforcement officers are terrible, by and large, at recognizing and responding to hate crime law if they are not in a specialized unit. They're just, the United States across the country is doing a really bad job at this. So it doesn't surprise me that they would not be able to recognize any type of hate crime. So that is part of the struggle in this country, that law enforcement officers are terribly bad at this. What would make them better? What would make them better? And this is goes to your second question with respect to the officers reporting to the scene in the specialized unit. If you could do baseline training for the officer, for all officers, and then make their default to refer it to someone who has responsibility for classifying it, and not just sorting it out themselves. Get just the facts, right? And then send it somewhere else to individuals who are better trained and probably have a deeper commitment. One of the issues with the specialized unit is they had a very deep commitment to individuals who are victimized by hate crime. I hope I answered all of your questions.
Thank you. Monica, do we have any other comments from Zoom?
Commissioner Cuellar has her hand up.
Oh,
Hi.
please, by all
Sorry
means.
about that. Sorry.
Hello and welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. Again, here in my community, we have our tribal police officers. And, we come into a lot of issues with jurisdictional problems. If a hate crime or something's been done outside of our reservation, our officers don't have jurisdiction. And again, and this comes to a lot of reporting, my community to do not feel or trust law enforcement. So they come back into our community to report a crime or a hate crime that's happened in, the local community. So our officers are up against jurisdictional. Once they report that to the officers, the state or county officers, then they kind of are, that's not our jurisdiction, that, didn't happen here. So we're running into a lot of jurisdictional issues when it comes to things like this. So again, I just wanted to kind of uplift tribal officers and just really, as you think about training, also making sure that trainings are available to tribal officers throughout the country as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions either from our staff or commissioners? And also, Monica, do we have any questions, public comment from Zoom?
Kevin Thomas has his hand raised.
Oh, by all means, Dr. Thomas.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Bell, for this great presentation. I was wondering if you could give us some feedback on the situation that's happening in Lincoln Heights, Ohio, where we have a law enforcement agency that allowed white supremacists to march without a permit. There were no arrests made. There were other issues around what they were doing there. And the citizens took up their own security for themselves. I'm wondering, do you see that as a viable solution where citizens are starting to create their own ways of protecting themselves from hate crimes? Or is it that we need to find ways to hopefully work with law enforcement so that the people that are being impacted feel safe to go to them and feel like they are being protected by them?
I think that we pay law enforcement salaries. And I just as soon my tax dollars and the tax dollars of citizens in small communities are huge. I lived in Bloomington, Indiana, for a mid-sized city, university town, and police and fire, the amount paid, sort of spent on police and fire was 80% of the city's budget. This is a huge amount of money that local communities are using to pay for police services. And I would like to see police services serve the citizens in the community. So that's just my take on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, Monica, from Zoom or from any of our wonderful staff or commissioners?
No other public comment via Zoom.
All right. Then Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Okay. Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
No public comments.
All right, then what I'd like to do is just add a couple of quick things because police misconduct came up. For those of you who want to do further research, look at a case called Screws versus the United States in 1945. Also, I would suggest you look at 18 United States Code 241. And I would also plug a very interesting book from a classmate of mine from law school called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. So I think all of those might be a good, a centering place to start. And if I can make one other suggestion, and that is Shades of Freedom by A. Leon Higginbotham, which is a more broad approach to how this has been framed. If it's okay, then what I'd like to do is put us on a 5-minute break. So I see that it's 10:08 now. If we could come back at 10:13, that would be great. And we're going to go over the new report that is being worked on. So if we could all see, let's make it 14 after 10:14. We'll take a break until then. Thank you. Dr. Bell, thank you so much for such a wonderful job.
Hey, Brian, take care.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, bye.
All right. It is now 10:14 and we are returning to our regular meeting of the California Commission on the State of Hate. And we are now going to go to our other agenda item, which we switched. I used a little bit of ledger domain today in switching. We're going to discuss now item 3, or originally item 3, which is switched to number 4, discussion regarding the 2024-2025 annual report of the commission. And I'm going to hand this over to our Assistant Director, Deputy Director, Dr. Alec Watts, in one moment. And that is number one, I want to thank Dr. Janine Bell for making such a wonderful presentation, interestingly and purposely, on Women's History Month. What a great presentation. And you're going to get a wonderful presentation now. I want to thank Dr. Watts for his tremendous efforts. Just give me a moment here. At a time when civil servants are being dumped on and degraded, and we're now seeing that, hey, when they're gone, they've actually provided a critical role for our governance. It is really important for me to take this time to thank Dr. Watts for leading a wonderful cadre. He's a Pied Piper of experts and scholars in putting this together. And I wanted to thank you all personally for the incredible work that you did by fusing what seems like an endless variety of available research and making it make sense and accessible to the public. This is something that is key to our mission. So Dr. Watts and staff, thank you so much for the phenomenal effort that you did in preparing this excellent document. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Chair Levin, and good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2024 and 2025 annual report of the Commission to you. So first, a note on the process. The report draft reflects the research findings and other activities of the Commission since July 1st, 2024. There are certainly a few things left to do with this report, including things like formatting the citations, graphic design, additional fact-checking, data checking, and copy editing. We also need to add an executive summary, a letter from Chair Levin, and a letter from Director Kish. We do those things sort of at the end once we finalize the substance in the report. But in this meeting today, what I'd like to do is receive any verbal feedback you have on this draft. And after this meeting, you may submit written feedback as well, but just note that this feedback will be on the public record. And I'll go over this process a little bit more at the end of the presentation of the report. So with that, I'd like to turn us to the substance of the report. Let me pull up a different document for you. Oh. Great. So this is an outline of the commission report. We organized this report with the same structure as the report last year. There are 7 chapters which are on the screen here. I'll just go through each one. So as you know, let's see. We start with introduction. We review the strategic plan of the commission, remind people of the scope of the commission's work, and then just provide a blueprint of the report itself. Chapters 2 through 5 are the main substantive chapters, I would say, of the commission's findings. Chapter 2 addresses patterns, trends, and data on hate in California. We began by introducing the same framework that we introduced, or excuse me, we just remind people of the framework that we introduced last year that we used to conceptualize the different data sources that speak to hate in California. This framework consists of law enforcement data, representative data, community-based data, and non-law enforcement governmental data. We also summarize our work with the California Health Interview Survey. And then the rest of this report discusses sort of key patterns and trends in hate in California, including the prevalence of hate, the different types of hate offenses, where hate is happening. And then we also dive into specific community-specific patterns and trends, where we essentially synthesize different sources of data, such as news reports, community-based data, representative data, and law enforcement data, to talk about specific patterns and trends that are affecting different communities and groups in California. I should say this section takes a sort of broad view of hate. So essentially it reflects what happens when you turn to communities and ask, okay, how is hate affecting your community? And so you'll see the sort of examples of hate that we provide in this section are a pretty broad span that I think all fit within the scope of the commission, but definitely a broad group of examples. The last half of this chapter addresses the intersection of hate in public institutions, just like we did on the last report. We discussed 2 examples of how hate intersects with public institutions. One is the 2024 election. We review the role of hate in the 2024 election and its impact on communities, especially in California. The second part of this looks at the inverse relationship. So we look at hate, threats, and harassment that are directed toward public officials and what the implications of that are. We discussed this in last year's report. What we did in this year's report was update the data and provide updated data, essentially, and new insights into this continued trend. Chapter 3 is the second substantive chapter related to resources and support. This is divided into 2 sections. Sorry, I won't scroll while I'm talking. It's 2 sections. So the first section is related to mental health interventions to help people impacted by hate. What we do here is review some common therapeutic interventions that have been found to help people who are experiencing symptoms that sometimes occur after experiencing hate. And then we review research that shows how these therapeutic interventions can be useful for helping people within the context of hate crimes, but also hate, bias, and prejudice more broadly. We also discuss other types of approaches that aren't necessarily therapeutic interventions, but sort of different programs and other types of things that we sort of found that have beneficial mental health impacts. So the second part of this chapter reviews the law enforcement responses to hate. We remind people of the gaps in law enforcement data, and we update our data on sort of what gaps we've observed in the most recent law enforcement data in California. We also discussed the public availability of law enforcement data. We did a research project where we looked at how many law enforcement agencies in the state post their updated hate crime data to their websites, and so we provide information about that. We also discussed the continued gaps in law enforcement training. We introduced the AB 449 training that the commission collaborated with Post on developing. And then we also discussed sort of the evidence-based forward. So we talked about the different decisions that we made when we developed the training and sort of the research behind those decisions. We also, we have one section that's essentially our initial findings on enhancing law enforcement practices for people with mental illness and intellectual and developmental disabilities. I think we saw sort of an emerging need to address this topic, and though we haven't done a comprehensive research on this topic, we did sort of start to explore it, and we include some of our initial findings there. Our third substantive chapter addresses hate prevention and intervention. This chapter is divided into 3 parts. The first one is related to preventing and reducing online hate. We discuss key patterns and trends in online hate and not all, but many of the considerations and challenges and complexities that one might encounter when considering how to prevent online hate or how to reduce it. We also provide 3, I would say, policy strategies for considering how to address this issue. The second part of this chapter looks at public messaging as a tool for preventing hate. Again, this was a topic that was discussed in last year's report. What we did here is provide a lot more evidence related to the use of public messages. And we introduced new guiding principles for designing public messages to prevent hate. We divide these principles into two types. One is guiding principles for designing the content of messages. The second type is guiding principles for the implementation of public messages. The third part of this chapter addresses hate prevention in schools. Again, this was a topic we discussed in the last year's report. We provide updated evidence about specific sort of policy recommendations to address hate in schools, additional guiding principles for preventing hate in schools. A lot of this work was informed by the expertise of subject matter experts and policy experts that attended the convening that we held in October. And we also provide some, some policy recommendations in addition to the guiding principles there. Chapter 5 reviews the activities of the commission, including the meetings, the community forums, and our research partners. And Chapter 6 concludes with a summary of the report and future activities. So that's the substance of the report. Happy to answer questions. I do want to go over the process real quick because I know you probably have questions about this. So just a reminder, this report is due July 1st of this year. We'd love to hear your feedback today in this meeting. You should also feel free to send us written feedback after this meeting, ideally this week. And what the staff can do over the next month is review the feedback and revise the draft that you've seen already. And in the April meeting, you will receive a revised draft. Within that revised draft will be annotations throughout the report noting the specific changes that were made and the specific piece of feedback that the changes were made in response to. So the key point here is that just know that any feedback you give us will be on the public record and will be shared broadly. So in the April meeting, we will plan for the commission to vote on the report. In the past, that vote considered of moving the report to the governor's office for approval and delegating non-substantive changes to the chair and staff. Of course, we will, the process, we can decide on the process depending on what your feedback is. And if there's anything else that we want to modify about that process, we can do something, we could tweak it a little bit, but this is just the ideal timeline that we laid out last year and that we think could help us meet our July 1st deadline to the best of our ability. Okay, and with that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
And just let me again, thank you, Deputy Director Watts. And if I could just reaffirm that this is not the only opportunity for folks to comment, take a look at it. And if at next meeting, there's any questions or comments, Dr. Watts will gladly take those queries. Anyway, thank you. And if we could start with commission questions or comments, if there are any.
Commissioner Roybal.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Dr. Watts, for the presentation and for all of the staff's work on the report. I'm very excited about the data set from the California Health Information Survey. The commission made a specific investment in that over the last couple of years. And to see that data and the rich data set that came from it is very exciting. I feel like it really provides a foundation for so much of what is in this report, in addition to the other data sets that we're able to access. So I'm very happy to see it here, to see it referenced early in the report, because that data set is a treasure trove of information, and I think it's very important to our work as a commission. So I just want to thank the staff for making sure that that happened, for developing the relationships to make sure that the questions that we wanted inserted and a true partnership with GIST. So thank you to the staff, and excited to see it in this report.
Thank you. And I almost said Chair Roybal, but if I could just take a second. You are such a wonderful person, forgetting about all the other stuff. And you've been so good to this commission and to me personally. I just wanted to take this time to thank you and Vice Chair Salcedo for your wonderful service and and your work with the then subcommittee on data and research, as well as this wonderful staff. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you and our former vice chair. Are there any other
Thank you,
questions?
Chair Levin.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Che.
Yes, well, let me just start by thanking everyone who worked on the report. And I know that all of this would not be possible without the leadership of Dr. Watts. I wanted to lift up several items. One is that as far as our goal in terms of being data-driven and having the most relevant data with regard to the state of hate in California, that has been done. So I just want to make note of that. There are a couple of other areas that that were concerning to me that as a commission, I think should drive us with regard to data that's missing. We know that, for example, with hate crimes reporting and law enforcement reporting, we do not hear with many underrepresented communities. And so I think it's really important that our forums really give an opportunity for us to learn more about what is happening. I did want to note that it was very concerning in the CHIS report that when it comes to young people, starting from the ages of 12 and upwards, that we're seeing that teens are twice as likely to experience hate than adults. So that's something that I think that I know we're paying attention to with regard to hate that shows up in schools. And then what I thought was of note, which is that where it was taking place and the nature of the hate was very similar to Stop API's hate's reporting, which is that a majority of it is actually verbal harassment. And that should not be minimized in any way, because for those of us who've experienced that kind of harassment, it is devastating and it creates fear. And it's also happening in public spaces. So our efforts to do more with small businesses, et cetera, is very important. But it also suggests that law enforcement approaches may not be a majority of where we should be making investments, because they're non-criminal. So I think those are incredibly important. And I think the final thing that I wanted to mention, and this goes to both the report and some things that I feel are concerning with regard to our California elected officials, which is the section on hate in public institutions and political rhetoric. As noted in the report, Stop API Hate also issued a report that South Asians experienced high rates of online hate during this election period because of the high visibility of South Asians in this election, in this race, that were both racist, misogynistic, and violent in terms of their threat. Which goes to the other concern that I had, which is that we know that public officials that engage in hate-based rhetoric and increasing hostility in public discourse contributes to the overall environment in which hate rises. And so with that, I did want to really applaud the report for highlighting the importance of public messaging and the data supporting that, and also issuing guidance. So with that, I wanted to just say that, and I promise this is the last thing I'll say, is that I was very concerned by an elected official who platformed individuals that were known to be white nationalists, that are known to attack the LGBTQ community because, in fact, and particularly trans athletes, we know that this is a very small portion of the population, and yet by legitimizing, I think, fears or concerns about trans athletes, I think that that has contributed to harm against the transgender community. We know that 50% of transgender high school students are being bullied in school. More than 50% experience cyberbullying. And as a result, we see serious issues around suicide, considering suicide and attempts of suicide. So I think this is all something that we should really be concerned about and reject. And again, just applaud everybody who worked on this report, because I think it really does provide guidance for how we as a commission can act together. Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just second your comment. I think it's disgraceful, if I may, that at a time when folks were trying to rid federal government of representation, taking off the Enola Gay off of websites and trying to eliminate transgender service personnel. That's something that affects our state. And I think that it is something that at a time when, for instance, the Defense Department is trying to drum out among the most patriotic citizens in our country from military service, that perhaps they would have been more well-suited to spend time looking at national security protocols on how to disseminate and respond to war plans. So I think there's a direct connection sometimes between competency and animus. And I think where we approach as an independent government entity to make sure that we protect all within our jurisdiction is exactly under our ambit. And I want to thank Commissioner Che for, as always, elevating our discussion. Thank you. Do we have any more hands up from commissioners?
Yes, Commissioner Suthers.
Thank you. I'd just like to echo the remarks of Commissioner Che and really applaud the leadership of Executive Director Watts for leading this. This is an incredibly comprehensive report that takes a lot of work. I'm glad to see that the timeline this year is not going to have us in any trouble with anyone in Sacramento. But again, very proud of the work, very proud to be part of this commission. I'm going to send you some written comments before the end of the week if I have any. But the report certainly stands for itself, and just thank everyone who's serving in this regard to push this initiative forward. It is, as Chair Levin mentioned, we are in an unprecedented time right now, and this kind of work and this kind of data and information is going to be incredibly critical going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers, not only for your comments and not only for your service to this commission, but your indefatigable service to our community. Thank you. Do we have any other commissioner comments or questions?
Yes, Commissioner Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much. Want to echo what my fellow commissioners have stated regarding the report, and obviously express my gratitude and appreciation for all the labor that has been put into making this possible. And thank you also, I want to specifically mention, you know, the hate that has been generated politically against all of our communities. Wanted to also, you know, just uplift a couple of things that I think are important for us to consider. One is, you know, what can we do as a commission? And I'm not completely sure if this could be included in this report, but what are some of the mechanisms that we can recommend or implement to protect people who are essentially being targeted, right? Like immigrant communities, trans communities, as Commissioner Che mentioned. I mean, like essentially everybody is being attacked politically, like, and and obviously these are the most marginalized communities. And so just wanted to uplift that, right? Because it is great that we have this report, but what are some of the things that we can tangibly do to ensure that our communities are supported and protected against all of this? I also want to mention that as we release this report, I know that we're still in the revision process, but I want for us to really think about what is the dissemination process of this report? How is it that we are going to not just inform our communities, but we can let multiple entities know, that this report exists and that they are protections for our communities, and essentially to educate people just in general. And I believe that this tool can certainly contribute to the, if not the elimination, to the diminishing of the hate that our communities experience. And so I want for us to encourage about, how is it that we are going to, inform people about this and how people can contribute also to, to what perhaps if we're missing anything in this report as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Salcedo. And in line with that, I think in the April meeting, what we'll look to do when all the citations are all corrected and polished, is to actually maybe have some kind of more public-facing release. And I'll talk to the staff and our public affairs folks about how to do just that very thing with regard to dissemination. And just since you brought it up, it's so important to respond to your query. I think we have to do a couple of things. One is just immerse the zone with community voices and expertise, particularly because we are not going to have opportunities for experts, community voices, survivors to be heard at the federal level to the extent that we were previously accustomed to. And I think within what we do in our little garden is till what we can. And that's why I want to say to all my commissioners, and particularly thank you for bringing this up, Commissioner Salcedo, is that this is a collaborative effort. So I think what we have to do is use our fact-finding and communal authority within the statutory allowances to bring this research and the community messages which you spoke so eloquently about to bear. So thank you, Commissioner Salcedo. I want you to know that I listen, and we all listen. So thank you. Do we have any other commissioner comments?
No commissioners have their hands raised. Oh, Vice Chair Adamski.
Vice Chair Adamski, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to echo the abundant thanks to our staff for their work on this report, not only for the depth and quantity and quality of information, but also for making it so readable. That said, we've only had the report for a few days, and I've read through about half of it, and I have a couple of questions. One is, I know we discussed in our previous year's report the hate that we were seeing on college campuses following the Israel-Hamas war. And I don't see that in the part of the report that I've gotten a chance to read, the first 80 pages. I don't see a mention of that so far. I'm wondering if it's included in the rest of the report later, or if we decided to omit it because we had already talked about it last year. My second question is also to follow up on the ethnic studies issue that we're seeing in the high schools, which we did discuss in our previous report. And I know we're also having some legislation move through our state legislature right now to refine the content of the ethnic studies curricula. So if the report talks about those two things toward in the second half, I'd like to know about that. And if not, I'd like to hear about decisions not to include those. Thank you.
Alec, Deputy Director Watts, do you want to address that before I make a brief comment?
Sure, I'm happy to discuss both of them. Thank you for the questions, Commissioner Damsky. Let's see, hate on college campuses. We don't have a specific call out for that, nor do we have a call out for ethnic studies, actually. Neither one of these were sort of the focus of research efforts within the past year, but I'll take your questions as feedback that we should be looking into this and maybe including something related to that. So if you have anything specific that you would like us to talk about that sort of that adds on to what our learnings were in last year's report, feel free to provide that in written feedback. We can also meet and discuss these issues and decisions about what to include.
Yes, I will. It sparked a question in my mind when I was reading about public institutions, and I was like, well, some of our state colleges are public and some of them are not. And we were talking about harassment of teenagers, but it seemed like it stopped at age 18 when they are then going off to college. So I'd like to make sure our report follows their life passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Damsky. And also perhaps we could address something in subsequent meetings or fora relating to the existing challenges that we saw with respect to college campuses and divisions and harassments of various communities, by the way. But additionally, what are solutions and how do universities tread in this new environment where they are seeing extraordinary pressure from the federal government with regard to how they implement not only their community practices and policies, but scholarship as well, which I think is a very concerning area for our state. And let me just speak. My old institutions, Cal State San Bernardino, is apparently one of those places that has been targeted with respect to new procedures and policies coming from this administration. So thank you so much, Vice Chair Damsky. Do we have any other questions or comments from commissioners and or staff?
Director Kish has his hand up.
Thanks. Thank you all. I just wanted to weigh in very, very briefly on Vice Chair Damsky's intervention. Thank you for that. So I've played a role in helping to guide the development of this report and edit it. I will point out that there are very significant portions about education, including in higher education campuses towards the end of the report, where we synthesize some studies about effective interventions for hate. In terms of discussing particular events, I have asked our team to focus on events that are new or different in the past year than in previous years. That isn't to say that we don't talk about events that have happened farther back than a year or that we shouldn't, and we can take that feedback. But this report, as you know, is 133 pages long. Our report last year is very long. And rather than create essentially a document that each year rehashes things that we've talked about in the past. I am interested in creating a document each year that draws on what we've done in the past. And again, this report does that by calling back to recommendations made last year, but that really focuses in terms of its description of facts on the ground on what has happened more recently. So that has played a role in what you see in this report as well. And I wanted to add that perspective to the conversation.
Thank you, Director Kish. That's very helpful.
And Director Kish, I would be remiss if I didn't thank you, not only for the leadership that you provided to the Civil Rights Department, which is an entity very near and dear to my heart. One of my original mentors, Ann Noel, was general counsel decades ago. But your indefatigable commitment to all within our state, heartfelt thank you, Director Kish, because you're a hard person to get a hold of because your demands are so great. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you not only for being here today, but for your leadership with regard to so many initiatives, whether it's Crew, which is under threat, whether it's your consistent taking positions to protect the most vulnerable, many times that don't appear in the press. I wanted to give you my heartfelt thanks as the new chair for all the work that the Civil Rights Department has done to making our commission successful. And one of those key legs on that stool is indeed this report. So thank you, Director Kish. Do we have any other comments from commissioners or staff? And they don't have to be the director. It can be anyone here. We really want to hear.
Commissioner Jay, did you still have a question?
No, I'll pass. Thank you.
Okay. I'm seeing no further hands raised from commissioners or staff.
All right, Monica, if I could ask you then, do we have anyone on Zoom that has comments?
Yes, Greg DeGier.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this under 2 minutes. If I go a little long, I hope you'll let me. First of all, thank you to the department staff for developing this. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds good. 4 comments. One is will there be recommendations based on the input that you got at the disability community forums? Speaking particularly of the recommendation that this commission recommended the Little Hoover Commission undertake a thorough evaluation of criminal and civil law as it pertains to protecting people with disabilities. Secondly, concerning Dr. Bell's comments today, I really think you need to include some recommendations along the lines of what she suggested in 2 areas in particular. One is drawing the hard line between the first responding officers' duties to just get the facts and not decide, specifically not decide to blow something off, or I shouldn't be so blunt, should I? I will be. Should not blow things off, but to get it to the appropriate people in the department. And the secondly is she talked about a hate crimes unit. Most of the agencies in California I think are probably too small to have a hate crimes unit, but there's none that is too small not to have a hate crimes coordinator. The post model policy recommends it, but does not mandate it. That this would take legislation to mandate that every agency have a hate crimes coordinator, and I hope that specific will be in your report. Third question or third comment, and I'll make this a question. This is not a question to the department staff. This is a question to the commission. Do you intend to follow the legal?
30 seconds, Greg. Sorry.
Do you intend to follow the legal requirement that you have this report to the legislature by July 1st, whether the governor has approved it or not? And thirdly, seconding Commissioner Salcido's and Chair Levin's comments that this is going to take a lot of follow-up. We've all seen great reports that have sat on shelves and nothing ever happens to them. This is going to take you, the members of the commission, to talk to legislators, host, the Attorney General, whatever agency it is that needs to carry out these recommendations. Don't just put it out there and think something is going to happen.
Thank you, Greg, for your comments. And are there any other comments, Monica, on Zoom?
No other public comment on Zoom.
Okay, if we could go to other public comments that may be coming in by email, Rebecca Goodsell.
No public comment by email.
Thank you. And Shanna, are there any comments in our office in Los Angeles?
No public comment.
All right. Thank you so much. I also, just before moving on, I think this is really important. This is a seminal work. I will be offering just for the public here, just some updates with regard to hate crime data that have been coming in, and perhaps some new reports that are out. But overall, what a phenomenal job. And I would be totally remiss if I did not thank Rebecca Goodsell, Kevin Thomas, David Kalkstein, and Monica Chavez, along with our wonderful Deputy Director, Dr. Watts, for just an incredible job. And what I think that you will see, and what we're seeing in today's meeting, is the power of collaboration across scholars, community voices, and people who are doing the heavy lifting out there in the neighborhoods, cities, and towns. So thank you so much. I just want to check one more time. Is there any public comment from any of the entities before we move on?
No public. Oh. It looks like Vice Chair Dempsey.
Hi, Chair.
Vice
I
Chair
just,
Dempsey, please.
thank you. It's not so much a comment on the item at hand. I just wanted to let everyone know I will be signing off at 11 o'clock for another meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your service across the state. It's true. Thank you. If I may, I think we're going to now go to our other category, number 5, which is the chair and subcommittee updates and discussions. And if I may, I'd just like to start with, again, wishing everyone a happy National Women's History Month, and especially to the wonderful women in my life, and they all know who they are. And I also would like to recognize some of the holidays of this season. Ramadan ends on March 29th. Ramadan Mubarak to all who celebrate. And we have the Passover and Easter holidays. And if I could just take 1 second with respect to just my own personal, because we don't advance religion as a state entity. But I also, having done interfaith work for many years, want to wish the Pope just the best of health in his recovery, as I think all people of goodwill want to reflect that at this time. If I may, I'd like to now go into my initial chair statement. Vice Chair Dambski, fellow commissioners, our former chair and vice chair, civic servants, and the public, thank you so much for the opportunity to introduce myself as chair for the first time with a little about my background and corresponding vision for collaboration. Please recognize that some of the issues I may bring up reflect very new developments, and as such, are my perspective on them and do not necessarily reflect, and probably don't, a previously discussed consensus of our commission. So accept these statements as merely my own, as a place to commence informed, vigorous discussion rather than to end it. The late Fred Rogers counseled, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And at this painful time for so many, I have reached out across the state and indeed to DC as well in the run-up to this meeting. All of you here who've showed up, and particularly the wonderful commissioners and staff, you're needed more than ever. And of particular import is my desire to facilitate and elevate discussion, not only between us commissioners, but with members of the public, which highlights evidence-based research, community voices, and facts, which is exactly within the ambit of our statutory mission. More broadly, this means that when transgender, Muslim, Jewish, Arab, Asian, Christian, Black, White, Latino, conservatives, Native Americans, or indeed any American is harassed, discriminated against, or subjected to hate crimes, all of goodwill must stand with them. Moreover, all Americans need to stand in solidarity with all others in defense of people's common civil rights and desire to live free of intimidation, irrespective of who they are and what their political affiliations may be. We all have the right to live peaceably as we please, love who we do, worship or not as we see fit, raise our children in the manner and traditions of our choosing, self-identify as we are, and associate all without any harassment or discrimination. Hate crimes are totally unacceptable under any circumstances, and we need to support all in protecting all, in exercising our rights. After assisting traveling public hearings on hate conducted by then Assemblymember Bloom last decade, I advised that it should be transformed into a permanent commission, and after years of hard work with him, his wonderful staff, and a diverse coalition backing it, AB 1126, creating this commission, was enacted. My desire stemmed from years of legal work, academic conferences, congressional and state legislative testimony, where it became apparent that there was a civic need in providing greater access to more elevated community and research-based debate and discussion. In partnership, though, with all of you, we'll flag issues under our jurisdiction for examination, where all are free to be heard. It is not just the province of a chair. California and federal law shields residents from discrimination and hate crime based on a variety of characteristics. And it also secures the exercise of various rights and protections, and all these are within our statutory purview. Within our mission is monitoring, research, and fact-finding relating to hate crime, intergroup relations, and education, as well as a requirement, which I take to heart, particularly as the recipient of my law school Civil Liberties Award. And that is to protect civil liberties, including but not limited to freedom of speech, association, religion, and privacy in accordance with the United States and state constitution and relevant law. Among our activities are annual evidence-based and community-informed reports, public fora, and regular meetings, which I intend to supercharge with your help, as we've seen today, by having these community voices intermingling with the best expertise that we have, particularly at a time when we're seeing in governance at the federal level a greater connection to political alliances than actual governance expertise. All you have to do is look in the headlines. As a unique branch of state government, independent of the federal government, we also have an obligation to monitor, analyze, and report actions of our stakeholders, like the federal government or large corporations, when they adversely impact people and liberties protected within our statutory jurisdiction. This obligation is all the more critical as various federal institutions appear more concerned with erasing groups of people from civic discourse than protecting them. Recent executive orders, actions, and statements at the federal level have challenged our sworn mission to protect some of our state's most vulnerable residents who are concerned or afraid. And I've been reaching out and monitoring media across the state, from a transgender service member in San Diego to an Asian American heartfelt recounting of past deprivations in the Bay Area, to a law-abiding immigrant couple facing deportation in Orange County, or to a rural disabled person concerned about accessing critical health services. In this moment, federal executive agencies charged with oversight, securing civil liberties, research, fact-finding, and eliminating discrimination have been dismantled or impaired, while our other federal actions have targeted law firms, universities, the press, the LGBTQIA+ community, Social Security recipients, including the elderly and the disabled, political dissenters, and immigrants with clean criminal records, among others. In this critical moment, another independent guardian of civil liberties, the federal judiciary, of which Director Kish got his start, has been critical of this federal executive overreach. To be clear, previous Supreme Court rulings upholding constitutional protections have been consistent in holding that, quote, a bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group cannot constitute a legitimate government interest. Additionally, nor does governmental action meant to stigmatize or degrade, or one that rests on irrational prejudice, are not legitimate government actions. After the president lashed out at the judiciary following some early administrative losses, Chief Justice Roberts issued an extraordinary rebuke where he said, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose, and it exists for the most vulnerable among us. Just this month, respecting the privacy of Social Security information, one judge castigated the federal government for a fishing expedition and hitting a fly with a sledgehammer, while another respecting deportations and the government's apparent due process violations that they found incredibly troublesome and problematic. Quote, yet another judge, relying in part on studies showing the efficacy of what we do, noted the federal government removed all references to LGBTQ+ youth from the website for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, including a page on the suicide rates of missing children and one on male victims of sex trafficking. It also removed references to LGBTQ+ youth from stopbullying.gov, including a 2016 study that showed the disproportionate rates at which they are bullied and a tip sheet on how to prevent such discrimination in schools. And this is a direct quote from a federal judge. Apparently, bullying and exploiting children is okay if they are gay. Not on our watch. Various deportation actions have relied on a widening of authority to include those apparently mistakenly removed, including a gay makeup artist and a soccer fan, without due process to those not alleged to have committed crimes at all, but rather merely disfavored dissent. This month, the California-based Muslim Public Affairs Council warned, just as Japanese Americans were falsely accused of aiding the enemy, the administration's rhetoric frames immigrants as inherent security risks without due process or individual evidence. Similarly, the American Jewish Committee rightly noted under the law there is a difference between protective speech, even when deplorable, and statements and actions that justify deportation. Just as I am finding another record for anti-Jewish hate crime and a double-digit increase in anti-Muslim as well, conservative commentator Andrew Sullivan noted this vile resurgence. On campuses in America, Jews have been harassed, spat on, intimidated, demonized, and the pathetic college deans have caved. I understand the outrage at these grotesque double standards. I truly do. But he also warned about the danger of pursuing another double standard by punishing lawful, though often flawed, yet passionate political dissent through punitive deportation. And may I add, it's also been punished by actual violence as well. So in this unique moment, as storms brew, conspiracism, conflict, fear, and grief, both near and far, how do we collectively as a commission rise to this moment? We reach out and we reaffirm the dignity and respect for all who reside in our state. We listen and speak, at once enhancing through rigorous research and public fora, as we've seen today, the ability of all our residents to be both objectively informed and respectively heard. We also categorically reject, and this is important, at a time when we're seeing public officials and judges and their relatives across the spectrum be harassed or intimidated, as we're also seeing houses of worship defaced and other types of vandalism and property destruction. We categorically must reject and condemn appeals to violence against any of our neighbors, full stop. And for those of you who want to read about this, I think you should look at Dr. Chenoweth's study out of Harvard, which shows that peaceful movements are the most successful and, may I add, the most ethical. Months before he was murdered on the evening of June 11th, 1963, after Governor Wallace's attempt to physically block Black students from attending the University of Alabama, President Kennedy, who would be dead just a mere 6 months later, addressed the nation on national television, proposing what would be the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which, by the way, is now under challenge by some in government. He did with a query. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated. I hope, excuse me, I hope my lifetime promoting evidence-based research to legislators, the courts, and the public, promoting civil rights protections, especially for the most vulnerable, interfaith dialogue, conciliation, and unbroken decades of political independence. And our center rose to that, my former center rose to that occasion, where we helped everybody across the spectrum. I hope that I can add a complementary skill set to the extraordinary ones possessed by my fellow commissioners, the Civil Rights Department, and the wonderful staff in our collaborative efforts to foster a more perfect union across our diverse state. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I need your input and help now more than ever. Thank you. And is Commissioner Dansky not here anymore? Has she left? Okay. What I would like to do is for the next meeting, and we'll put this on the agenda, I want her to have the ability to make a statement as well. So on that note, we will proceed with our reports from our various subcommittees. As a reminder, if you feel you're a victim of a hate crime or incident, you can contact the California versus Hate resource line to report the incident and be connected with resources. We will send that link in the chat as well. We also want to remind you about the free services available for communities through the exceptional, I've seen these folks in action, through the exceptional California Civil Rights Department's Community Conflict Resolution Unit. If your community is experiencing heightened fear, conflict, or tensions because of discriminatory practices, hate incidents, or hate crimes, the Community Conflict Resolution Unit may be able to assist. CREW, as it is known, offers a range of conflict resolution services to help communities effectively address hate and discrimination-based community conflict. All CCRU services are free, voluntary, and confidential. The services can be requested by completing the request for service form online and emailing the form to ccru@calcivilrights.ca.gov. One more time, because I'm always the slow left-handed writer. CCRU, all caps, CCRU, and then at small case, calcivilrights.ca.gov, ccru@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We will put the contact information for Crew in the chat. Also, the website, if I may, calcivilrights.ca.gov/community-conflict-resolution-unit/. I hope that's a forward slash. We will have discussions of presentation from various experts and community members in subsequent meetings. I want to also know that for those of you who are commissioners, I understand how important your time is and how busy you are. If you cannot attend, please send the staff, who will then forward to me, people that can go in your stead, because I want representation to the extent we can have within the commission itself. So you are authorized to have a representative to attend meetings. If you can't attend, I encourage you to take advantage of this. I would also now like to go to our subcommittees, and I believe the first one will be done by Commissioner Che, who will be speaking on behalf of our subcommittee related to patterns, trends, and prevention. Commissioner Che.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present on behalf of Chair Levin and myself, our subcommittee report. And I want to just acknowledge also in our subcommittee is Alec Watts, Assistant Deputy Director, Monica Chavez, Program Analyst, and our Research Data Specialists, Rebecca Goodsell, Kevin Thomas, and David Cockstein. As we reported previously in the past, we partnered with the Initiative to Study Hate at UCLA, and that included a convening last year. I'll just make a note that much of the synthesis, key recommendations, was also included in the report. So I would recommend commissioners taking a special look at that. And the staff continues to deepen our research to understand and preventing hate online and hate in schools. The staff is also compiling information about existing deprogramming and rehabilitation programs for hate crime offenders, and also creating a synthesis of research and information about how effective they are. And then two other items that are related to the Initiative on the Study of Hate is a media project, which would be tracking news of hate incidents. And that's another way of identifying patterns. And I'll just note that that's actually how Stop API Hate started. We started with tracking media accounts before we started our reporting center, and very supportive of that. And then finally, there's an effort around a synthesis of research and information on offenders of hate crimes and hate incidents. And a particular interest is their motivation. We're looking at both doing a lit review on the typologies, likelihood of recidivism, potential solutions to prevent recidivism in this population. And I will just also make a note that at Stop API Hate, we actually do not ask responders to try to identify who the person who has caused harm, because we believe that that may actually contribute to bias, and again, going into the person's motivation, etc. But I think this is very important in terms of our long-term work, which is how do we prevent incidents from occurring in the first place. And that concludes our report, unless Chair Levin has anything else to add or the staff members.
Well, first, I want to thank you for your wonderful service, and also, if I may, our former Commissioner Shirin Sanar, who did such great work. And I think you made an excellent point. If I could, it's really important not to just throw out raw data. And I think your concerns are important. By the same token, as a commission with a fact-finding mission, we will present in an analyzed manner all the legitimate data that we can get with respect to victims, offenders, and responses, and present it in a way that will not be fodder for bigots to half-truth and exploit. And I think that's so important, because in the data, we often have limitations, and we also have unique demographic information that is localized. So what I'm saying to you is, for instance, in my work, when I look at the 50 largest cities, we're going to have a different representation than we would with the nation as a whole, because the demographics of those cities are different. For instance, people of color are much more represented, and other religious minorities are much more represented. So I think it's really important, and I think Commissioner Che made a really important point, that we don't just regurgitate raw data, but we put it in an analysis in a context so that it cannot be misused or exploited. And I think that's a very important point, along with the fact that we have a statutory mission to be transparent and fact-finding what we do. And I could not be more happy to have a partner in this more than you. So thank you so much. Are there, I think we go to the other subcommittees before going to discussion. So I'm going to now go to the subcommittee on resources, support, and responses with Commissioner Salcedo, who I again want to thank so much for your service and your commentary.
Thank you so much, Chair Levine. I appreciate the opportunity to report on our subcommittee. During our meeting, we discussed the need to improve law enforcement responses, specifically for people with mental health issues or disorders, and of course intellectual and developmental disabilities, and other emergency responses that could happen as it relates to mental health needs. And of course, we need to make sure that we have a more effective response that include partnerships with mental health professionals and community-based organizations. And I'm so grateful that some of the discussions that took place were also included in the report. And I think it's important for us to really think and understand other effective interventions, right? Like not just law enforcement, or as we know it, or police interactions when assisting or trying to get to calls that are made by individuals who may need a different type of support rather than law enforcement as we know it. And please, to my fellow commissioners and the public who are listening, we appreciate if you can please look at chapter 3 in the report, specifically on the area where it says enhancing resources and support. Some of the other things that we talked about was, again, the mental health interventions and possible mental health interventions that could that have proven to be effective, and and really looking at what is out there and that can possibly support all of this. One of the things that we also discussed is, the hate crime data and the reporting and availability for different law enforcement agencies across the states, and the reporting mechanisms. We talked about the infrastructure of this particular issue and how do we make sure that all law enforcement, regardless of budget, regardless of size, regardless of localities, really report right on the hate crimes that happen, and also not just hate crimes, but also hate incidents. And as Commissioner Che mentioned earlier, right, like harassment and other things. And so, so these are some of the things that are important to all of us. And in addition to that, we also talked about bystander intervention training and how do we, figure out ways to support these individuals. I think that is sort of like what the discussions that we have, and happy to answer any questions that any of my fellow commissioners may have.
And please, Monica, if folks have questions, I think we'll take them after, if that's okay, the last subcommittee, if that's okay with
Sure.
you, Commissioner Salcedo. And just heartfelt thank you for the wonderful work that you do, both within and outside of the commission. You're a treasure. If we now could go on to the subcommittee on community forums with Commissioner Cuellar, who I also just want to extend my heartiest gratitude for the work that you and Commissioner Filer have done, that we couldn't have a commission without. The community voices, the bringing this to the public is so important. And anything that I can do as chair to assist, please do not hesitate. But without further ado, my gratitude and introduction, Commissioner Cuellar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Levin, and good afternoon, everybody on the call today, fellow commissioners and all our partners that we have on today. I'm going to offer up the update today on the community forums. As you all know, that we have been actively trying to pin down some dates for you all for the next forum. So our first forum is going to be, we're looking at the target date of the first week of May. I believe Monica might have sent out some dates for the commissioners. So hopefully you can get back to us as soon as possible so we can nail down that date. But we are looking at the first week of May. And our first community forum is going to actually focus on immigration rights, immigrant rights. We're going to have we're going to be breaking it down into three formats. We want three presenters, one being from community partners. We want to know kind of what's going on the ground, what's happening, what are they hearing from the community. And then we want to have a legal aspect and have somebody from possibly CRD or Department of Justice there to talk about the legal, kind of like know your rights. And then we want to go into subject matter experts and possibly have a panel of a couple of different subject matter experts. So I'm really asking the commission, if you guys know of anybody who may be willing to do a presentation, please let us know. Please send those to Alec, and he can definitely let the commission, our subcommittee know. The other thing I've heard throughout today is a lot about schools and the hate that's happening in the school system. So I do want to let you guys know that we are planning to have a community forum on schools. So again, that's going to be probably a couple months out. So again, if you guys know of any great speakers, anything that you guys can contribute to that forum, that would be great. I know that I've heard from Commissioner Che early in the forum today, speaking about really focusing on represented communities. So I will be taking that back to the committee and discussing that. So just wanted you guys to know that. And if you guys have any suggestions for our committee, please don't hesitate to let Alec know. And thank you guys, thank you everybody today.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for your work. And I think it's telling. I think it's telling that the wonderful presentation that you presented up in Northern California, where those voices were heard, that right now funding for so many Native American resources are being cut, and in particular ones that related to the missing women and the abused women that were spoken so eloquently about. What a disgrace. And that's why, just if I can, thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you did, because it is now more valuable now than it's ever been. And we're going to continue to bring that kind of interaction. And you have done, along with Commissioner Filer, such a beautiful job. Heartfelt gratitude. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to commission discussion. If there's any commissioners' questions, and by the way, staff too, about what we just heard from the various committees, or anything that was said in the chair's statement, which was mine alone. So thank you. If there's any comments, really looking forward to hearing.
Not seeing any hands from commissioners.
Okay, Monica, do we have any comments on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Thank you. Shanna, do we have any public comment in Los Angeles in the room?
No public comments.
All right, fantastic. Then without further ado, I'm going to move to section 6 of our agenda, commission member announcements. And what I would like to do is actually go last, because I want to make this, again, a collaborative and facilitated discussion. So please, commission members, would love to hear from you.
Commissioner Roybal.
I just want to bring to the attention of the commission 2 events that are coming up, both on Monday, March 31st. The first of which is Transgender Day of Visibility. So if you have an opportunity to attend an event, the trans community and gender expansive community, of which I am a part, is important to stand with those communities. So Transgender Day of Visibility is again on Monday, March 31st. Please support the trans and gender expansive organizations that are working in your communities, including the one run by our amazing colleague, Commissioner Salcedo, the Trans Latino Coalition. And then also on March 31st is Cesar Chavez Day, which is a holiday in our state. And important to recognize the important work and contributions, not only of Cesar, but of Dolores Huerta and farm workers across the country. And so I will conclude with that and just say, sí se puede.
Gracias. Any other commissioners?
Commissioner Salcedo.
Please.
Yes, thank you again so much. I want to make a couple of announcements. We are so honored and grateful that we have the opportunity to release a full-length documentary that is called, as part of Trans Visibility Week. The documentary is called The Trillion Cut Diamonds of Resilience. And this full-length documentary is specifically about aging trans women It's going to be screened this Friday. If you're in LA and if you'd like to come, please come. There's going to be a reception, a red carpet, the screening of the film, and also a small panel with the subjects of the documentary. And in addition to that, so if you're in LA, please come. We're happy to host you and see you there. We are also, the Translatino Coalition will be organizing a massive walk / march and inviting all communities, all people to stand in solidarity with one another. So it's the Walk for Humanity. It'll take place on August 24th, which is on a Sunday. And so it's a massive effort that will bring all communities, all movements, all people together to stand in solidarity with one another, but that will also support fundraising efforts for our new building that we are going to build in Los Angeles. We are going to have 1,000 people that will create teams and will help us raise $1,000 each. So if any of you would like to be part of a team and want to register, more information will come through and we'll share as we go by. But please save the date, August 24th, and it's going to be in Los Angeles. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. And can you just repeat for the slow handwriters like me, the location and the date of this event? I want to make sure everybody gets it.
The one on Friday or the one in August?
The one on Friday more specifically, just because.
Yes. So the film is going to be screened at the Harmony Gold Theater, which is located on 7655 West Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood. And again, the program will start, we have a reception at 6:30, red carpet, and the screening will take place at 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
No other commissioner comments.
All right, then I will just close with my brief ones. Again, thank you so much for bringing up Commissioner Roybal, the Transgender Day of Visibility, which is coming up, and also same time, Cesar Chavez Day. And I want to tell folks that at many Cal States and many other universities, there's a day of service being conducted on Cesar Chavez Day. And by the way, let me just say, yes, I know he was born in Arizona, but we claim him here in California. Kind of like that thing with Lincoln, born in Kentucky, but Illinois claims him. But I want to point out something, just time-wise. On Monday, we have Cesar Chavez Day. On April 4th, we have the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And I think it is so important on how collaboratives can sometimes last beyond a lifetime. As many of you may know, Dolores Huerta, who came up with Si Se Puede, while Cesar Chavez was on a hunger strike for justice, that he never, ever vacillated from his commitment to nonviolence and Martin Luther King's and Gandhi's example. So let us not only celebrate by remembering him, but also with a day of service and a continued commitment to nonviolence in our state. Another couple of announcements from some worthy entities and groups. The California Association of Human Relations Organization is having an online Zoom convening, very impressive, on April 2nd. So around the same time. And also my colleagues at the Muslim Public Affairs Council tomorrow on Zoom are going to have a presentation on civil liberties. And they're going to have Steve Rohde, who's one of the former heads of the ACLU for Southern California. So that should be very good as well. Check both the CAHRO website and the MPAC website as well. I just wanted to close with a couple of things relating to my service as chair. I have decided on my own to do the following. First, no paid speaking at all. Lodging and getting me there is okay, unless it totally goes to the commission. Number one. Number two, I have gone on inactive status with the bar, so I will not be taking cases. I think it's important for people to understand that, at least one of the things in my position over the years was lifelong independent and worked with all across the political spectrum. So that's important. I will not be going to any political rallies for any candidates. I will not personally endorse any candidates, nor have I. I will also, in general, not do any court expert work. And when I say in general, unless there's something of a constitutional nature or some appellate thing, but as a general rule with regard to representing in criminal or civil cases, I will not do any of that. And I will not do any paid corporate consulting, but to the extent that there is a company within the state that wants to ask me questions, as I would any university or any NGO, gladly, as long as it's advance the protections of all within our state. So I want to make sure that was something very important. So I'm not going to be engaging in political activity. I also will not be signing petitions of any sort in this role, because while I might bring up through my own First Amendment rights issues that I feel important or issues that come to me from my fellow commissioners or the community, I think having someone who demonstrates some degree of independence as facilitator is important. So I wanted to thank you for that. Is there any other commission discussion before we move on? Oh, yes, Commissioner Salcedo. Please.
Thank you, Chair Levine. I would like to make a request, if at all possible, if we can close this meeting in honor of Linda Becerra Moran.
We're not closing yet, but I think that would be thoroughly appropriate, unless there is some
Yes, when that happens.
Right.
I'm just
Okay.
making that request. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Glad to do it. And also, just let me say, it's so important. Now is the time, especially with someone who looks like this, to say allyship is important. It's critical. And one of the things that Reverend Vivian told me was crucial. So when anyone is hurting in our state, we stand with them. Thank you. Any other commissioner statements? Staff? Okay, Monica, do we have public comment on Zoom? Okay, it looks like there's no public comment on Zoom. Rebecca, do we have any email public?
There is public comment on Zoom. Sorry, I was on mute. right.
Not that I haven't done that before. Thank you, Mona.
Danielle?
Thank you so much. This is a repeat from what Chair Levin announced about the California Association of Human Relations Organizations. That is an association of city and county human relations, human rights commissions from across the state. Hate crimes is a central focus of what many of these commissions focus on. We have an upcoming convening April 2nd from 12 to 1:30, where we will share concerns and strategies about these turbulent times. Everyone's welcome, free. It's virtual Zoom based. The digital format has really increased our commission's ability to consult and console each other. To register, it's Cairo, CAHRO .official, the word official, @gmail.com. And the Zoom link will be sent. So thank you for your work. Want you to know the commissions across the state appreciate your guidance in the hate crime, hate incidents, bias situations, and appreciate this moment to invite you to our upcoming convening. Thanks.
Thank you, Danelle. But if you could just stay on for a second. First, she was president of Cairo and head of formerly San Diego Human Relations. So this is a wonderful person to make that invite. But what I would like to do, because I'm a slow writer, can you once again, just if people want to go to this convening, if you could just give that address one more time.
Thanks. Cairo, CAHRO, stands for California Association of Human Relations Organizations. So Cairo.official, OFFICIAL @gmail.com. And a response that invites you, tells you more about the convening, and sends you the Zoom link will be a response.
Thank you so much,
Brian. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for the wonderful work you've done over so many years. Monica, any other comments from the public on Zoom?
No additional public comments on Zoom.
Thank you. Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
No public comments.
All right. With that, unless there is any other discussion, I would like to move to item number 7, future agenda items, and commission discussion on that. And I will go last.
No commission discussion.
Okay. What I do want to remind folks is that we will have an opportunity to go over many of the just incredible findings that are in this report hopefully in the April meeting. But so if you did not get a chance to go through everything, I suggest please know that you will have an opportunity later. One of the things that I would like to see on a future agenda item is discussions about what some of the commissioners have brought up previously, which is how we can advance the campus climate and discussion related to sometimes polarizing issues. And by the way, one thing on that, new Fox News poll, the second most important item to the electorate today is the polarization in our country after the economy. So to the extent that we can bring people together, I think I'll make some suggestions. I've been speaking with Dr. Watts about something we can do where we can look at both the First Amendment implications, universities as communities, and we have such a deep bench with regard to staff and commissioners that that would be something I'd like to see as a topic of either a future meeting or a fora. And again, please, to the extent that anyone has any good ideas or even ideas that you might just want to throw out there, please go through the appropriate channels. We have, because of the Bagley-Keene Act, we can't email each other. It's almost like the Severance show. But the information does get to everyone, just sometimes not as quickly as we'd like. Is there any other commission discussion relating to future agenda items?
No.
Okay, any public comment, Monica, on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Rebecca, do we have an email public comment?
No email public comment.
Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
No public comment.
If it is okay, then I'm going to move to agenda item number 8, public comment on items not on the agenda. So I don't believe we go through the commissioners for this, but Monica, do we have any public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Rebecca, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment, but just to follow up on a previous commenter, the website is actually calhro.org, and that's the California Association of Human Relations Organizations.
I'm sorry, CAHRO.
CALHRO. In other words, Cal for California, HRO for Human Relations Organization.
All right. Thank you so much for, boy, nothing gets by Rebecca. Thank you. And in a good way. Thank you so much. I presume now that we do not have any comments from Zoom, any emailed or any comments from the room in LA relating to items not on the agenda. Is that not correct? Okay, with that, I am moving to what for some will be their favorite part of any meeting, which is the adjournment. I, for one, had a wonderful time, and just before we adjourn, I want to thank the staff, the commissioners, the community, and our wonderful expert. This is exactly how we need to rise to this moment. So with that, at 11:50 a.m., do we have any motions for adjournment of this meeting of March 26, 2025?
So moved.
Commissioner Cuellar has moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Suthers, on behalf of the Commission on the State of Haight, I want to thank all the commissioners, the public, the staff, and others who came here today, and thank you in this difficult time.